Hi, I'm Katie Ross and I'm one of the counseling interns here at the Family Center, and today we are going to be discussing domestic violence as part of our FCC Knows, where we tackle a bunch of mental health issues.
Hi everyone, my name is Christy Muller and I am a licensed marriage and family therapist here at the Family Center.
Hi, my name is Angel Duarte and I'm APC right here with the Family Center. A very interesting topic in reference to domestic violence. Of course, domestic violence, as we hear a lot in this month of October, is the control or the aim of control of one of the partners want to have of another partner. One of the things that we also look at it is that it doesn't have to do anything with age, with gender or sexual orientation. We find domestic violence actually in all realms. So something that we will not see in the past, like males, now males are actually expressing themselves out. They're coming out and expressing themselves as being affected by domestic violence, including on gender and sex. We find individuals who are being part of the domestic violence because of their sexual orientation, whether they're claim to be bisexuals, homosexuals, others they find themselves involved under this sexual violence. And of course there is many types of domestic violence, and Chris is going to tell us a little bit more about that.
All right.
Thanks, Christy.
Yes. So as Angel was sharing, there's several different forms and several different populations who may be affected by domestic violence. But some of the types, and we'll all break these down a little bit further once we get through. The types are physical abuse, sexual abuse, psychological, emotional abuse, financial or economic abuse. We also have things that sometimes we don't think about, such as abandonment and neglect. Those can also be different tactics of abuse within a relationship. So Katie's going to start off with just giving us a little bit about what physical abuse looks like, and then we'll all kind of join in relation to that.
So I think physical abuse is probably one of the most commonly known forms of physical domestic violence. Basically, it's intentionally inflicting bodily harm onto another individual. So some of the ways that this can present itself is pulling your hair, punching, slapping, kicking one another, using weapons against you, both as a control tactic and physically using them as well, preventing you from contacting emergency services if you are experiencing any injuries, trapping you in your home, or preventing you from leaving and throwing objects at you.
And then whenever it comes down to the emotional abuse, I know that you might mention commonly known physical, but whenever it comes down to emotional, I believe that this is one of the hardest ones to try to identify, because all of a sudden we find ourselves living in those conditions. So we believe that it's normal. For example, being humiliated or being criticized at all times right there. And one of the things to keep in mind is this is a consistent behavior. We understand that at one point in time in our lives, we are going to criticize others are going to criticize us. But whenever it becomes a constant way of living, then it's no longer normal. Whenever you're receiving threats, especially whenever we have our cases, especially whenever you're not allowed to leave the house, or someone is controlling you, whenever it comes down where you can or cannot go, whenever they're always blaming you or using as a scapegoat, whenever it's always your fault, it's never my fault, I never take control or never take responsibility for what I'm doing, but I always blame it on my mate, blame it on that individual right there. I always use a scapegoat. That is another way of being emotionally abused. And then using manipulation. Whenever we go back in there and try to get our way, and once again, whenever you constantly are doing this, whenever you're using manipulative tactics to get the other individual to do the things that you want him to do, and then it becomes a little bit deeper. As this becomes the normal way of living, then you start looking into degrading. Whenever one partner is asking the other partner to do things that actually are degrading, or things that the other partner in normal situations will not do. So we find that to actually be in emotional abuse. And we got to remember that it is escalation. Okay, so many times it starts with that emotional abuse and then turns into that physical abuse right there. So, we work ourselves towards that right there. And of course, there is, this escalates to physical, and then of course it leads us down to sexual abuse. Where, Chrissy, what can you tell us about that?
Right, so thank you both for sharing all those different, details about these different forms, because I think it is hard sometimes, especially in a relationship, we start to forget that certain things aren't acceptable, because we're like, this is a partner, this is someone we care about, so maybe I should allow things to go a little further than I may would if I wasn't in a relationship, a marriage, or something.
Because I love them.
Right, because I love them.
Yeah.
And sexual abuse seems to be one of those bigger categories when you think about what you're willing to deal with and not deal with as far as abuse is concerned. So sexual abuse would be the definition of pressure or coercion of doing something that you don't want to do when it comes to any type of sexual contact. And I know that one thing that's really difficult is when you're married, you may feel obligated to engage in sexual interaction with your husband or your wife. But if certain things emotionally aren't going well, or if you're getting hit, you also may not feel comfortable to do these things. But if your partner makes you feel guilty for not engaging in sexual activity, if your partner begins to make you do things such as oral sex that you wouldn't usually do, or if they rape you and tell you things such as, well, you're my partner, so you're supposed to do this. If you don't do it, I'm going to go cheat. All those things, like you said, emotionally are those manipulative.
It ties it all together.
Right. It makes you feel like, well, okay, if I don't, then this person's going to go out and do this, so I'll just engage in it. But any act where you're feeling like sexually you do not want to be a part of that, whether you're married, whether you're dating, you have the right to be able to say, no, I don't want to be a part of that. And any moment that someone makes you feel you have to, it becomes sexual abuse. So some different examples could be, for instance, like I said, oral sex, if you're not usually engaging in that with your partner and feel obligated to have to do it. Rape, restricting access to birth control. So some partners may say such things as, well, we don't need that, we're gonna, get married one day, or we want kids one day anyway. But if you haven't decided that you're ready to embark on trying to produce children, and they are telling you you can't access birth control or condoms or any other type of way to prevent you from getting pregnant or STIs, that's a form of abuse as well, sexually.
Or even taking the birth control
or taking it, right?
Yeah.
Yes, so things like that. So even if it's a person who says they're taking it and then don't take it to try to trap someone in relation to something, all those fall underneath sexual abuse, because you're taking away someone's right to say yes or no. And that's usually the thing to be in, awareness of when thinking about abuse or domestic violence. Are you taking away someone's right to be able to choose or not choose? And if you're taking that right away, if no one can choose to say no, then technically they don't have any right at all. So they're going to automatically say yes whether they want to or not. That's a form of abuse.
So, just a question. So, you're saying that whenever I say I do, it doesn't mean that now we can do whatever we want to?
Not
I
if
can
you...
force to do whatever I want to?
Right, and that's the thing too, because I know you mentioned earlier in relation to, like, people may have certain arguments or things like that, and it's the same with sexual desires within a relationship. Everyone's sexual tendency is going to be different. So if you in your relationship are, more aggressive when it comes to sexual things, but you both have agreed on that and you both are comfortable with that, then it's fine.
It has to be consensual.
It has to be consensual. So to your point, if you're saying, I'm willing to do this, but then you engage in it and realize, no, that makes me uncomfortable, you should have the freedom to say, this is uncomfortable, I don't want to engage. And when that is taken away from you, that's when it goes to that sexual assault, sexual abuse type of parameter. Kissing and touching that makes you feel uncomfortable, those are also forms of that. And again, just taking away, for instance, if you're intoxicated, you can't technically say yes if you don't even know where you are because you're inebriated. So that also can then fall on those same rings of sexual abuse. So it's important to, one, be sure about what it is you want when it comes to a sexual relationship, or what you want out of a partner, period, but especially when it comes to these things, so you can find comfort in knowing how to converse about it. And then when you need to maybe exit left if that person's not making you feel comfortable. I know I went on a tangent with sexual abuse. Katie, I'm gonna go to you.
No,
for
I think that's
economic.
very important because I think you addressed something very important, that sometimes people believe that in relationships they're obligated to
Right.
have sex with their partner, they're
Exactly.
obligated to do all these sexual acts, but
Right.
if you're not wanting to do that, then that is a form of sexual
It
abuse as
is.
well. So the last form of abuse that we're going to talk about today is economic abuse. And prior to entering the therapy field
Yes.
and learning about domestic violence, I never really considered economic abuse as a form of domestic violence. But it's basically when the abuser takes control or limits the person's access to finances. And that's kind of, as you were saying, it's a tactic of control. So they control their activities, where they can go, what money they can spend on. It really limits that person and isolates them essentially. Economic abuse looks like providing an allowance and then closely monitoring it. So the abuser will say, hey, I'm going to give you X amount of money and that's all you get for food, necessities, clothing, that kind of thing. Preventing you from working. Sometimes abusers want their partner to stay home and not have contact with the outside world. So again, going back to that isolation. Maxing out credit cards. That's a really important piece too. You know, your credit is everything. So if your abuser is taking advantage of that, that puts you in a dangerous situation financially. Living in your home but refusing to contribute. Sometimes in relationships, you know, if you're not married to that person, they think they don't have to contribute, but they do. Refusing to provide money for necessary or shared expenses. So again, to that cohabitation piece. But that was a really eye-opening thing. I never really considered that as violence per se, because it's so much different from the physical violence piece, but it's still abuse nonetheless.
It is. And so again, like we were just sharing, I think it's great to sometimes just be able to come together and be clear about different definitions, different understandings. Because I know there's a lot of people, even like you were just saying yourself and myself as well, before I started looking more into relationship violence and things of that sort. It's so many things to be aware of. And I think it's helpful to also know what things are out there to be able to help you if you are noticing that you're in this type of relationship, or even if you know someone else who may be in it and you want to kind of help them get out. So again, we are located in Columbus, Georgia. So we do have a facility here called Harbour in this city. So if you're in neighboring cities, you would have access to being able to contact Harbour to be able to help you through the process of trying to get out of a domestic violent relationship. Now, if you're not around this area, then there are things online such as the National Domestic Violence Hotline, which we will all have these resources listed at the end of the video, where you could go on there and just gain some information and some knowledge. Also, Love is Respect is a website that I found that has a lot of helpful information. They have safety plans on there to kind of help you figure out how do you live with an abuser when you're out, when you're ready to leave, as well as when you're at work. So it has a ton of different things to think about, different materials you may need to have on you and have access to. So Love is Respect is a very good website to be able to look into. Also, the Duluth Institute, we'll have that on there as well. They have like these wheels, the power and control wheels, which just kind of break down some of the things that we all were talking about today. Intimidation tactics, manipulation pieces, how abusers may use children as pawns. You know, all these different things are on there. So that can also be a resource. And another thing I just want to share is thinking about teenagers and, you know, middle schoolers and young adults as they're embarking on trying to engage in relationship with other people. It's good to be able to have these conversations with your family, you know, so that they can know what it is they need to look for when they're embarking on dating and different things of that sort, because that's also really big, unfortunately, teenage relationship concerns. Because again, teenagers, it may be more of, I really like this girl, I really like this guy, so this is okay if they talk about me today. This is fine if they, you know, tell me I'm not the cutest person in school. But all those things tie into emotional abuse, could get to physical or sexual abuse. And it's just good to have that knowledge and to be aware. So again, like I was saying before, we're going to have those resources listed. Are there any other things you two feel we should share?
Yeah, one of the things that I always like to bring up is that at any time, anyone that is watching this video believes that I am not the person being abused, but I'm the abuser. You know, all of a sudden I came to recognize that I have a problem and I need help. That is why we're here. don't need to leave that on your own. You don't need to be ashamed of it. You take the first step. Come down and say, hey, I know I have a problem. I know I've been going down this road. I need some help. So we are here to help you. So once again, we always talk about the person being abused and what is available for that person. But let's face it, there are some times in which in our lives we are faced and we say, hey, I got a problem. You know, if I'm going to tell somebody what's going to happen with this and all that there, and they just need to know that there's a place that they can come in. They can talk to us. They can receive the tools necessary to be able to change their way of life. They don't have to continue going down that path. They don't have to continue living in that environment. They can actually change, and we all can change.
Yeah. It's a great message that no matter what side of the equation you are on, there's resources available to help you. So I think that kind of wraps everything up today. Thank you guys for joining me today.
Of course.
Thank you.
So if you or someone you know is needing help or support in domestic violence, as Christy said, she outlined a bunch of great services, and we will have that at the end of this video. Thank you for tuning in, and hit the subscribe button so you can get notifications for all of our new videos for FCC Knows.
Yes.
Thank you.